serious. Teachers, what is the worst thing you've seen a student do? I worked with a special needs student who had serious issues around feces. He would hide it around the classroom, wipe it on teachers when he was upset, and also try to eat it. The saddest part was that wasn't his worst behavior. He was very violent and sexually aggressive. I won't go into details, but he was reported, and no one ever found evidence of abuse. None of us teachers believed it, though. The sexual aggression was too specific and targeted for him to have not seen and/or experienced abuse. Stab another student in the back of the head with a pencil. Went in right at the base of the skull. Luckily, it didn't hit anything important and just needed 3 stitches. But it was deep enough that it stayed in before the doctors took it out. A different type of bad than most of these. I was a teacher at a poor inner-city school. I had a lot of wonderful students, but some difficult ones. One was the worst, clearly bright, but was always sleeping through class and acting up and never doing homework. I lived about 30 minutes away. One night, I stopped by the local Wawa after a night out with friends. It was at least 11:30 p.m. and I was already dreading the early morning drive to school. And who should be checking me out but my own problem student? He was working late to make money for his family and then getting home at 1 a.m. or later before heading into school on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. He was a smart kid, really smart. I hope things worked out for him, but I can't help but wonder what would have happened if he'd been allowed to have a childhood and focus on his education. A teacher I had in high school told a similar story. In the least amount of words, the kid was always falling asleep in class, and when she confronted him about it, she found out he was staying up all night protecting his mother from his abusive father. My stepson recently saw an 11-year-old boy stab an 11-year-old girl in the chest in class. He said it was clearly targeted, because the walked right past him with the knife and even made eye contact before going for her. I was talking to a kid about Pokemon one day during their lunchtime. I'm the band director, and a lot of band kids come to the band room for lunch. We were having a good time. He's a great tuba player, and I tell him I can't wait to see him tomorrow. He took a rope and hung himself in the last period of the day by kicking a desk out from under him. Luckily, the teacher he was with was able to somehow get to him, but I ran down in time hearing the screaming and was in time to see him hanging there as others tried to support him enough to keep him from dying. Kid was gotten down, but that was awful. It's so hard to tell sometimes, even when you're right there with them right before they try it. When I was teaching preschool, I had a little girl, between 3-4, walk up to another girl who was sitting on the rug reading a book, grab her by the hair and slam her head into the wall. They hadn't been interacting in any way prior. When I asked her why she did it, she said she wanted her to know it hurts. I was teaching for 3 months in a terrible inner-city school in London, UK. Terrible, because the school's management was super ridiculous and refused protecting or standing up for their teachers. I quit after 3 months at the end of the first term. The school begged me to stay and promised me a pay increase. Here are some highlights. A female 15-year-old student pulled out a used tampon from her vagina during class and chucked it on my colleague's female face, telling her to fucking shut up. A 16-year-old female student spat on my face while calling me a fucking poof. The school's head teacher put her on detention for an hour as punishment, while the student was laughing at me saying, "You see? All I got is a free lesson now, fuck off." The school refused to suspend her and let me know that if I call the police to charge her with assault, they will support the student and refuse to acknowledge the attack to protect the school's reputation. A male student smeared his feces on a huge wall in the boys' toilet, writing "shit" with it. A group of 6-7 students, 16-17 years old, surrounded a male colleague, pushing him from one to another, took his glasses, very high prescription, rendering him practically blind, breaking them, then beating him and kicking him. The school refused to investigate as he couldn't identify any of the students. He couldn't see the faces without his glasses. He quit the school the same day. This place was a nightmare. My mom taught special ed. She worked with EC kids who had emotional issues. After she died, I found this video of her and another teacher talking with a student, a boy who was about 10. The video is super disturbing. He tells them that he stabbed a woman and threw her in the river after he raped her. When asked what he had done to her during the, rape, he said, "I took her clothes off and hurt her." You could tell that he didn't quite know what rape meant. He was persistent and spoke with an aggressive tone. He definitely didn't kill a woman. This story was made up, but it was super disturbing because you could tell that he had witnessed or experienced things that helped him come up with that story. He begged to go to jail. The realization that he would do this because jail seemed like a better place than his home. I know they notified CPS and made a police report, just in case. I don't know what happened to him after that. He definitely didn't go to jail then, but I hope CPS got him out of that home. He was so aggressive, but it was all a plot to escape from whatever went on in his home. My favorite teacher in high school was a very kind, lenient man. Do your work, be respectful, and follow the major school rules, and you and him would be cool. The one thing that would seem minor, but that he was very strict about, was taking any medication in any way, shape, or form in his classroom. One day, I needed to take some Advil for cramps and asked to take it. He said I needed to go to the nurse for permission. I ended up asking him why he's so strict on it. It turns out he had a student pass out in class one day at his former school. He tried to wake her up and called the nurse, but she wouldn't wake up. They called 911, and by the time they got there, she had died of an OD on narcotics. She's took in the bathroom that she had hidden in a Tylenol bottle. I don't know how he went back to teaching after that. Brother is a teacher at a district with 1.1 technology for the students. They had parental filters on the school computers, but had a lot of issues with kids abusing Dropbox. They had it installed for group projects so kids could collaborate, but it turned into a way for them to share nudes and cheat on exams and all sorts of other stuff. The weirdest one was a group of students that would take pictures of teachers bending over. They'd then edit faces onto the teachers' butts and upload them to a shared Dropbox folder, and it was like a weird but kind of innocent-ish meme in the high school. It pretty quickly turned into the students making fun of certain teachers and really sexualizing others. I taught college English literature and composition for 25 years until I retired a few years ago. I've caught students cheating on exams and plagiarizing quite a few times, at least a couple per semester. During every exam, I had students turn off their phones and place them on their desks face up. I always went around and checked their phones. During one exam, I had a student say she didn't have a phone. She was a single mom who had recently immigrated to the country, so it seemed reasonable that she couldn't afford a phone, and it didn't occur to me that she was lying. She asked to go to the bathroom during the exam, and I let her go. While she was gone, her name popped up on the course site, and I could see every resource she looked at while she was out of the classroom for about 5 minutes. I let her finish the exam, but wrote to her immediately after and included the record of everything she'd viewed during the exam from her phone that she apparently didn't have. She claimed that she forgot she had her phone, and when she remembered she did have it, she was embarrassed to admit it. That it was in the pocket of her jeans, that she must have hit the course site when she was pulling up her pants, because it was the last thing she'd looked at online. I said I'm sorry, but I'd have to forward the evidence to the dean. She said she was going to appeal it. I replied that that was fine. It was her right to appeal. Meanwhile, the dean's office contacted me to say that this was her third offense. Because it was her third offense, she automatically failed the course. It was sad because she had high enough grades to pass the course before the exam, so even if she'd failed the exam, she would have passed the course. I think about her often because I admired her so much for restarting her life with a small child in a new country. She would sometimes bring her young son to class if she couldn't get a babysitter, and she was very attentive to him, and he was very well behaved and never disrupted the class. My dad was a custodian. Bodily fluids are pretty normal in that job, but One day after work, he looked really exhausted. Just defeated almost. I asked him what was wrong. He said that day there was a fight in the schoolyard of the high school he worked at. They had somehow brought some furniture into the yard, and one kid had the other kid on the ground, and the kid was wrapped up in the chair. The kid on top took the other kid's leg and snapped it backwards across the chair. He said he could hear it snap from across the yard, the screaming, all of it. He had to have the crew go out and clean up after the fight with a power washer to get the blood off the concrete.